What's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
Very good. How you doing? Let me get
I'm
my
doing good over here. Now, let me ask you a question to start it. Let's get it
yes,
right
sir.
out the way. How many times do people come up to you and say, "Hey, the dishes are done, man"? Like, how many times
uh
have you heard that in your life?
I couldn't guess, but it's great. I love it. I love having something, a line that people love. And Joanna Cassidy, who's also in Tomahawk Babysitting, she gets right on top of that, Rose, all the time. And she gets quoted more than Blade Runner, more than Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So I'm very lucky to, have a great quote in that film.
I'm a kid from the 80s. We're going to talk a lot about 80s nostalgia in a moment because you had a big part. You know what? Let's just jump right in. I mean, first of all, you started at like the age of like 2 on your first on-screen appearance, whether it was commercial or whatever. And then at 5, you were like doing like Little House on the Prairie, Knight Rider. Like we're talking like Fantasy Island, Mork and Mindy. We're talking about like all the things that we grew up with. I mean, it's insane if you go down the list, like, 8 is enough and Love Boat. Bro, you were on Love Boat.
Yeah, with Reggie Jackson.
How amazing is that? I mean, what was it like to be an actor so young and be on set?
Well, you're expected to act like an adult. You got to be on time and know your lines and don't waste time, while you're filming. But, they understand you're a kid. You still have school on the set and they're pretty aware of that because they have to call you away. I mean, our kids got to go back to school and they pull you away from the set. So sometimes adult actors can be like having to deliver their lines, to the script supervisor and, an X on the back of a C-stand. But I think that the dynamic in the industry changed when John Hughes, even exploitation movies in the 50s and stuff. I was a teenage werewolf. They knew that there was coin in a teenage market and youth market. And then the FCC lifted the advertising restriction to minors in the 70s. And so we've got that great Saturday morning cartoon run, which was obviously just toy commercials. But it gave kids a lot of work, right? And 70s TV. Oh my gosh, we only had the 3 networks, but that was that. Prime time was considered, I think, 7:30 until 11 back then, maybe 7 even. Now it's just strictly 8 to 11, and there was so much great television in the 70s. And I was very lucky. I got to be on a lot of shows that I watched myself and loved. So you get to work with all those iconic characters, as well as the locations and the vehicle cars and all that other great, and animals for some reason. And, including like after school specials and movies of the week and crap like that. What's the rating on your show? Is it R? Is it
You could
PG?
go, you could say whatever the fuck you want, brother.
And
there it
they
is.
work with a lot of animals. And I don't know, they say don't ever shoot, on exotic location or work with kids or animals because they're a pain in the ass on the set.
Yeah.
And so I always, I was aware my grandfather really did instill in me to be a well-behaved child actor. Just don't waste time and get it done. And it's all money, 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 and time and money. So I'm very aware of that at young. They called me 8 going on 40. And animals. I worked with cats and dogs, of course, and chickens and trained raccoons and birds and, horses and anything that crawled, walked. And of course, I eventually did the cheetah, which had every sort of, animal you could imagine. And very comfortable. Lassie, even on the Kids' Choice Awards or Nickelodeon. Yes, I got to work with Lassie. So I'm very comfortable with animals, just to let casting directors know that.
Oh, I'm a big fan of animals. I got a beautiful Chihuahua. She's my heart and soul. Do you have any pets right now?
Yeah, we have a half Chihuahua, half Pomeranian.
That's
10 years old, Sandy.
That beautiful.
Yeah, he's our little Pomawawa.
I got my Polly Peanuts, and I swear she thinks like she's a rhino or something. Like she's always going after other dogs. I'm like, what do you think you're gonna accomplish here, girl? Like, her personality is so big and she's so cute, and that's what made me fall in love with her like right away. Like she's got a personality. You got to earn that trust with animals, you know what I'm saying? Especially Chihuahuas, because we know they got a fiery, yes, they got a fiery temperament. And so I want to ask you, you were talking about, you know, acting. What got you in? Was your family involved in acting, or is it something that you just wanted to do as a kid?
They were involved. My great grandfather was in vaudeville and silent pictures, and my grandfather was in silent pictures, Chaplin's The Kid, and a bunch of films, and had an incredibly historic life, and then had a resurgence in his career with Uncle Fester on the Addams Family TV series. And so he was a presence in the family and the life, but it was also, it was, the industry was shrunk. The mystique of the industry, kind of what it is, like to work in Hollywood is almost like an oxymoron. To work in Hollywood is it's very fickle, and you go up and down, and this is before Twitter, or you could be, you know, hauled to the brig for a Facebook post. And of course, the time TV was just this juggernaut. And I think a lot of film and theater, the older film and theater actors, there wasn't really replays. You know, there was some syndication going on, but they considered it disposable. They can pick up a quick paycheck, pay their lease on their incredibly huge house in the Hollywood Hills, and then move on. And you see you getting to work with these legendary film actors on all these great TV shows. And so it was looked at as a job, a career, just a job, a career that had a interesting industry that has its own kind of rules. So I just learned those rules very young growing up. I did, the instigation to be on TV was just that. I just wanted to be on TV, and I wasn't aware at 4 or 5 when I really wanted to start how the family was involved in that, until I was probably about 8 years old when I saw The Kid at a screening here in LA with everybody. I was like, oh, that's what everyone's talking about. Got it.
That's got to make you like so like street savvy, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of street smarts, because if you're growing up around that environment, and we know about, you know, I'm in the music business, so I know about musicians, and, you know, I've brushed elbows with actors. Like it's a crazy world. It's a crazy environment. Artists, like we're great people, we're creative, but we're also a little crazy, you know? So to be a kid around that, like a lot of like, you know, childhood actors, they unfortunately have to go through trials and tribulations, suffer with demons. You didn't do that. That's amazing. Credit to you. And a lot of people do reform themselves. So no judgment on anyone that has gone through a path of other things. And, you know, you're still working. I mean, I saw you do something with, you know, Kevin Smith. Like, that's incredible, bro. Like, I can't wait to get him on my show. He seems like a wonderful guy. So I want to run through your career. We talked about the childhood stuff, you know,
Right.
the TV shows, and you were a part of like most of the most iconic, you know, daytime or even evening television shows from the 80s. I mean, you know, it's the plane, it's the plane. I mean, you were part of that. That's incredible. You know, so a couple of movies that we have to bring up. Babysitters, something with you and babysitting and babysitters we have to talk about here. So I want to start with the adventures in babysitting. You know, Elizabeth Shue, who obviously just appeared on Cobra Kai, and a little product placement here, a little Cobra Kai tribute. That movie is incredible, and one of the funniest 80s films of all time. What was it like to work on that film?
Like catching onto a moving train. You know, it's high single digit budget. You maybe even doubled. I don't know.
It was double. Yeah, it was like it was 10 million.
12 million.
Yeah, 10 million. Yep.
I've seen the actual below the line from the UPM from the 6 weeks we did in Toronto, and that came out at like 4 mil. We did a couple of weeks in Chicago. We did LA, effects, post. I'm gonna put it at 8 to 10 maybe. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd wanted to get on a movie for a long time. So, and I'd auditioned for, just call it everything. And it was very close. And all my friends got this part, or, you know, got this part. So when I did finally get Brad with the help of Chris Columbus, and we had screen tests for mixing and matching all of the cast, you start to get your schedule and thing, and you have to work out going to Canada, working in Canada as a US resident is complicated to go through customs. You have to have cash on your hand to hand them with all the work permits and all that other stuff. So the production supplies you with that ahead in advance. I'm 16, and this is December of 86, flying off to Toronto alone because although I hadn't been emancipated, there was no need. I did graduate high school. I took the California High School Proficiency Examination with Roxana Zal sitting behind me, and passed, which means I could work as an adult and I didn't need a social worker or a teacher on the set, and I could work adult hours, travel alone, and it saves the studio money because they'd have to pay for a plane ticket for the parent and then a studio worker and then hotels for everybody. So that I thought that would help give me the edge. And I did on a few TV things like Silver Spoons and Growing Pains and Just the 10 of Us, working like that alone. But my mom was around a lot. She helped me out. So there I am off to do this alone in Toronto. And it was 2 weeks of rehearsals in the production office in Toronto. And there's where we just started working with each other, fleshing it out, having fun, playing around. We'd had a lot of people that were there for the rehearsals. Calvin Levels, for Joe Gipp, the car thief. I can't remember if John Ford Noonan had come in yet. It just allowed us to play and try different things in the scene or whatever and get to know each other. And Chris Columbus was just there every step of the way, guiding us into not too broad of a performance. He always wanted to kind of ground it, like, no, keep pretending like it's real. He goes, we'll keep raising the stakes. You guys just react like, you would. I don't know. I had never had a night on the town like that. See what I did there? So right from the start, after we took a break, right before Christmas, we took like a week off or so, and then came back early January, like the first week of January, and just started. And so we're shooting completely out of sequence, trying to shoot as much in order as you can because it helps. But we did have to shoot the very end of the movie sitting around in Brad's bedroom, like, yeah, man, this was such a great night. And we're like, we've been shooting for a week. Like, we hadn't done all of the things that we talked about yet. And so then it was just, we always stayed on schedule. We did have some script changes from the first time. The third act was very different than what we have. I'll just leave it at that.
There's a movie called The Sitter, I believe it is, with Jonah Hill, that is a complete, paying homage to the Adventures of Babysitting. Like, I mean, that a great movie in its own right, but it's like all the beats match up in that film. And that was one of those films when I was growing up, like, back in the 80s, like we had Police Academy, Porky's, and there were certain films that, weren't so like family friendly, and you're
right. The danger film.
Cover your eyes. Exactly.
You're not supposed to watch.
Your parents would tell you to cover your eyes, but you still do this anyway. Like you still open your fingers through the eyes so you can see the boobies, like that. But this movie was like a good, funny, like a little bit pressing the envelope on like pushing, especially for that time, pressing. First of all, like, let's face facts here. You worked with some hot ladies, with the babysitting. Christina Applegate, Elizabeth Shue. Come on, bro. Let's face facts here. It's okay. Our wives trust us. It's all good. It's all good, but we got to face.
They're going to do a movie about an ugly babysitter? Come on.
It's not impossible. I mean, come on. You go to Pornhub, it's not going to work. I mean, you can't have an ugly babysitter. All right. So before we get into Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, I want to talk about a movie, Toy Soldiers.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That was a hell of a film. Lou, you got to work with Louis Scottsville Jr., bro.
Such a pro.
What the fuck?
He's so great. He was so great. We when he'd hit set, come out of his van, all five of us the kids would run up to Lou and just give him this big group hug. Lou, he's amazing. He showed what it meant to be a professional on the set. Regardless of the picture, the paycheck, you give your best every time that camera is rolling. Actually, anytime on or off. He was really, really awesome. And also we had Denham Elliott, Andrew Devoff, so many amazing supporting players that really brought it to the adult world. So it was the kids playing in a realistic R-rated bullets and,
Mhm.
being thrown out of helicopters, and just that was very satisfying to be part of that R-rated thing that ended around that time. Really, I think 1990, or 91 is the last that you can. And then by 94, you've got True Lies making fun of putting kids in jeopardy, with Elijah Dushku hanging off of the F-14. So it was, and we didn't play it for the trope of the kids are in jeopardy. We played it for the trope the terrorists are in jeopardy because we're bad kids.
I
And we
love
got the
that
Pentagon.
movie so much because I related to it, because in 1991 I was a bad kid. I even tried to like do the thing with the mouthwash to see if I could actually get drunk, like you guys did at the start of the film. And I was always watching like the hardcore, films and stuff like that. But what I liked is that, people could be more risky back then. They took more chances. And, Will Wheaton, Sean Austin. I mean, you guys did a tremendous job because you almost don't see you guys as kids in that film. Like you guys are, fighting, which something I love. And that's the best part of the film. And it's like, it takes you from like this kind of like happy bad kid scenario to like, whoa, wait a minute, helicopters and madness and ruckus and chaos. So that's what makes movies great. Like nowadays, like, I'm not saying movies are terrible nowadays. There's a bunch that I like, and I want to talk to you about movies in a moment, about what you're watching, your content that you're viewing.
Yeah.
But it's like back then there was much more experimental. It was much more like original. I think that's the word I'm looking for, is original.
Well, two notes on that. I think that screenwriting has kind of two ways you could go. They all have to tell a great story, but there is a formula for film. There's a formula for film. You have to have a setup. You have to introduce character. You have to find goals. Oh, there's a reason, and all that Joseph Campbell crap about the calls, the adventure, and the crossing the threshold, and the confrontation with the mother. And there's all these beats that, of course, Star Wars and Harry Potter and Star Wars hit over and over and over again. They start to become really familiar to people, that they're in jokes of like how similar they kind of are beat for beat. But an action movie, you just need a good bad guy. That's really it. You need a good, believable bad guy. And Andrew Divoff refused to break character, or really not. He didn't want anyone to see him as this funny, light guy on the set. He's not. He's the sweetest guy in the world. But if you see that, we'll be like, oh, hey, there's Luis Cali. He's kidnapped us. He's such a nice, you'd see that in this. So he kept up that work all day. All day, he was always challenging us to be afraid of him. And Dan Petrie Jr., I give it to, who's a great writer. This was his directorial debut. And it was with the huge score and the great effects, and a story that just rips along, gives you very little time to kind of think about it. And it's hard to come up with too many loopholes. They jammed this, they cut off the phones. Okay, some of my favorite second act bit, though, is with Joey Trotta and his mafioso family. And because at the moment you go, well, the military can't do anything and the kids are helpless, but the mob will get them. And but there's that cost. We hit the dad in prison, but now we lost Joey. And so it has a bottom to it, and Sean Astin could be the hero, and Billy Tepper can save the day, rescue everybody. And then you have that money shot at the end. There's this helicopter shot that had hundreds of extras of kids being freed. In the helicopter shot, you see like a news chopper, and then you see a military helicopter go flying by. And so that was a 3-chopper day.
There's weight and gravity to like films like that. And you were also talking about like the bad guy being likable. I mean, by the time, like you mentioned Star Wars, like by the time we get to Anakin turning to the dark side, you kind of like him because you understand his mom was like beaten and battered, and he's got a lot of complications. The Emperor's messing with his mind. So you like him. And I do some screenwriting. I'm actually working on a screenplay right now, and I want my bad guy to actually be likable, but even though he is a bad guy and he's doing things for
like in the Snyder cut. what makes it better is if you give a reason for the bad guy to be bad.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
and what's also is you have to throw in the audience's mind. There's got to be a point where the hero makes a moral choice that wouldn't be considered good. The hero
Yes.
has to sacrifice some of their hero-ness, and the bad guy has to have a fatal flaw that gets exploited eventually at the end.
I
And that can
love
be
this.
that greed, that impatience, that power. That's how you get the bad guys. You go, well, you want the power? Here's the cup. Drink from it.
I love that.
You chose poorly.
It's a contrast, which is beautiful. And it's funny, like, I think one of my favorite characters of all time is Tony Soprano from The Sopranos, obviously over here now. And I like the fact that he's so dark, but he's likable. Like that's so hard to achieve, that kind of characteristic. A lot has to do with acting, though.
It does. Yeah, I think it mostly is the writing, because Shakespeare, when he's writing his histories, most people consider the protagonist to be the guy with the most lines and things. But for him to have his Richard the Thirds and to him to have his questionable heroes, and truly evil heroes that maybe the audience is throwing tomatoes and half of them are rooting, get her. That it's just theater. And fun. Now, of course, they can tell really important stories and movies. I love dark humor. I think dark comedy and satire, like Network, is the way to go to really kind of deliver it so it's a pill that gets swallowed by everybody.
You've mentioned theater. I know you've done theater. What's that experience like? Because there's no cut, copy and pasting. There's nothing like that. You have to just go raw live.
You do, but it's about a lot of preparation, and then it is about being in the moment. Because if something falls on stage or something happened in the news that night, and just the audience is different than they were the night before, well, of course they are. It's a different night, so you can't do the same thing over and over and over again. 8 shows a week in theater, because it's not the same performance. Somebody's going to be a little later on a line. Somebody's going to look a little wrecked from partying the night. Somebody's going to forget something. And acknowledging it and being with the audience so that they're with you is, oh, that fell, I'm going to pick it up right now, just so they don't sit and think about it the whole scene. That's what I love about live theater, and that maybe there's a moment that it just really all comes together on the right night with the right crowd, and it just really happens.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Film is, you get to capture that on film. You do 3-4 takes. So take that best take where it just, that really, we'll use the beginning from the other one, but that was the take. So
as a musician, I've done it so many times where I play performances and we've had good nights and bad nights. I know exactly what you're talking about. And then we're like, tech goes out, or my bass drum, because I'm a drummer, like say I pop my bass drum head. It's like, what do I do now? So I got to play the floor tom, the tom as the bass drum to get through the song, and tell everyone, give me a second, and turn my drum set around and then put the beater on the thing and just go. And then there's times where like singers forgot the lines and I'm like, just keep singing, bro, keep singing, just get through it. Like, because you could only go one direction, which is the direction you need to go into and get the job done. Being a live performer is not the easiest thing in the world, but it's also very exciting. I think it brings out, it elevates your soul. It elevates your passion, because you have to get it done. Like there is no, you can't fail. Like you have to do it, like, for better or for worse.
It's high stress. It's constantly changing things. If people are good with situational awareness, and they're good at fixing that burst pipe while the thing's flooding and it's about to flood the animal shelter, fix it in 5 minutes or we're all going to suffer. You do it. It's that pressure of performance that is an adrenaline rush.
It's a natural high. Yes, I was going to say that.
And it also forces you to give more and listen more, because you're not the safety of a take and they'll cut it and make me look good, or they'll use my best take. But you can also learn something. Like say Rolling Stones breaks a top E string, but then they're like, wait a second, and they write a riff. They all of a sudden they write a riff because of that. that's really interesting to me. I love it when, and also a live performance, I believe, can have moments where you go, oh my God, there's so many Led Zeppelin jams that are just them.
Oh, dude.
You're doing that now?
I love where you're
yeah.
going with this right now.
Yeah.
I got a Led Zeppelin tat right here, Fool in the Rain.
Nice.
John Bottom, drum line. One of my favorite drummers, Neil Peart of Rush. A lot of people. So I want to actually segue into that before we get into the later part of your career and the, other things that I want to discuss, because I could talk to you all day, brother. I can tell you right now. But for like music, obviously you like Led Zeppelin. What do you listen to? What passes your time nowadays? Because times are weird, so we need things to help us.
Well, here's the thing. I guess I roll along with technology. So growing up in the 70s, I had a record player that had you could stack 5 records on it, and they'd drop all night while you go to sleep and listen to Beatles and George Carlin albums.
Oh, man, the best.
Radio was scant where I grew up, little small town, just 12,000 people or so. Malibu. I don't know if you've heard. No, I'm kidding. The poor part of Malibu. It was a tract house. It was across the street from the beach. And so we got one station that came in well was K Earth 101. So I'd heard 50s and 60s, which is the foundation of rock and roll and a great kind of time to get your primer on rock and roll. My parents were kind of hippies and more the like Hell's Angels style early 70s kind of hippies and less the Flower Child. They're more burn corpo shit. Okay. That's their motto. My mom taught me how to hack phone calls, how to get free ones on pay phones, how to call person to person and ask for the opposite person when you're landing in an airport. And they go, oh, I'd go, it's mom calling for my son. And my mom would get this and she'd know I landed okay. She goes, nah, I refuse the charges. And then you've sent codes using the system to pay for it. She taught me all sorts of fun tricks, like how to get money out of a payphone. When people use a quarter and they do a call, it'll hang in. There's a quarter that hangs there that can give change or something like that, or there's a way for it to give change. But when they invented calling cards, you would put 0 and then the number you were going to call, and then it would say put your calling. But when the moment it did that, it would release the change, and whatever was stored, I'd get $1, $2 at a time. It would click and it would release all the change through the lock. It was this weird hack. And I used to race at Samo High. We had one payphone that would pay off like a slot machine. And me and Andy Milder, he was in Weeds. He played the lawyer in the wheelchair. Me and him would race to this payphone to get a payout for it. Oh, shaving down a penny to put into a parking meter and give yourself the maximum time on it. All of these little things. So that informed my music, I think. I hung out at Zappa's house with Ahmet.
What?
And,
wait a minute, Frank
Zappa? A lot. After Adventures in Babysitting had come out.
Holy shit.
Probably it was 88, 89 is around the time I did like Cousins and stuff.
What was that like?
It was the compound. It was, there's Gail, there's Moon Unit, there's Dweezil recording downstairs. Me and Ahmet would go play video games or, just go do whatever, run around town. Diva, we'd see her crawl out every once in a while and get some food. And Frank, you'd be sitting there and Frank would come out wearing, long pajama bottoms and, start his morning thing. I played Frank's freaking grand piano, and you're looking it up at all album covers and awards of his and stuff. So but it was also at the same time that like Moon Unit was doing a Chips episode, and it was already way past Valley Girl. So they left just music, and he'd also done 1,000 Motels. So he'd left music and entered Hollywood as well as the music scene. But for an artist like Frank, it was just a bigger palette.
He's one of like the biggest prog rock guys of all time. I mean, I'm a huge prog rock fan. Obviously, Dream Theater, Rush, Tool, bands as such, and his playing his drum patterns in terms of the drummers that worked for him over the years is borderline impossible unless you have
look at the keyboard parts. Look at the xylophone.
Oh my God.
Look at the tempo, the chord changes, the 17 against a 28.
Exactly. See, you know music. So do you play something?
There was when I was inspired when it was Zappa on Zappa. I was inspired. There's one cut I love, and I'm like, could I learn it? And I'm watching and I'm going, I could, but it would probably take me 6 weeks to learn one track.
Oh, hell yeah. Let me ask you a question. I mean, you sound like you know a lot about music. Do you play any instruments?
I started playing piano when I was 8, the classical piano instruction.
Oh, shit.
And then band, the music teacher, they do like a tone test or whatever. And it goes, oh, you got a great ear, trombone. And my mom wanted me to play saxophone. So I'm like, still in grade school. This is, 4th or 5th grade. And realized later they just were short on trombones in the school district. So they'd encouraged me to lug this damn trombone to school. And that turned into marching band and then guitar after about 88, I guess. Yeah, I started rocking out and took a lot of what I learned in piano to guitar and picked up guitar. I could then listen to songs and play them by ear. I couldn't do that on piano. I needed music in front of me to play piano.
Oh,
then after learning to play by ear on guitar, I could go back to piano and then play stuff by ear because just transfer it in my head.
Yeah, the same notes.
I had a little 8-track Tascam that would record the cassette tape and then, just produce stuff for theater. I would produce quadraphonic soundscapes for experimental theater pieces where things would be flying around the audience and very, very fun.
Dude, you're speaking my language with the Tascam. I had the 4-track with the cassette and you got all the levels and you're trying to mix it and you're hanging out with your buddies trying to record, your masterpiece at the time back in the day, with all the ambition in the world. I actually have one that is really good. I was like, shit. I was surprised. I'm like, this came out really solid for that time. Nowadays, everything's digital. I used to love recording analog because it's more pure, it's more natural, but everything's digital nowadays. And there is convenience to it, but you also lose, I think, integrity. A band that I love so much, Chevelle, to my knowledge, recorded analog, and you could really tell the thickness of the sound, like very big. I mean, I'm into all styles of music, whether it's jazz, country, rock, funk, punk, metal, rap, hip hop. What about you? Who are some of your favorite bands?
Oh, wow. Well, there's different definitions of that. There's bands you see live. There are bands that have a long career. This is one of them. Already mentioned.
Stones,
of course, still around, still doing it.
How are they still doing it?
Deal with the devil. Obviously a deal with the devil. You had bands that were alive for just several years, like the Beatles, and then changed music forever. You have I loved Aerosmith and any rock solid, a bass, a couple of guitars, and a drum kit or two. I didn't mind. I started to get into heavier stuff. Nirvana really got me, and then I got into the Seattle sound a little bit, but Nirvana was it. And then I see this band, Guns N' Roses. Oh shit. So here's a band that I think actually is the same as they are off stage as they are on stage, and their story is authentic. And that's what I was looking when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you're looking for an authentic experience. And so Gunners, I saw them multiple times in concert and grew to like other bands that I didn't think I would like through that. And through some of my friends like Metallica, he goes, and I don't want to hear Metallica. It's just noise. I come from classical music background. And he puts on Nothing Else Matters. And I go, that's like really beautiful. That I recognize the influences, and I'm like, that's heavy metal. He goes, and then he plays some of the rest of the album. I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. And then I really kind of embraced it and got into heavy as I'll totally listen to it. Screaming, raging, absolute thrash. And I love punk and I had a lot of punk friends. Well, everyone knows Little Dave from the Dickies, but there's funny thing about LA punk bands and like the Venice and like Hollywood scene, not Hollywood, but more like Echo Park. It's really broken and really scary. And there's a lot of drugs and stuff in the neighborhood and really scary, but it's
Oh,
cheap.
shocker, drugs and punk rock.
Yeah, where 17 people are living in one house that's meant for 3. And I love punk rock crash pads. Oh yeah. And then there's and I got to witness like Sam Kinison want to be a rock star, you know, with what was the song he did? Wild Thing. And I love all of that kind of blending back and forth, the theater of it all. So I love Marilyn Manson and Ozzy Osbourne, and I understand what it is and how different people are attracted to different things. Appreciate country music. The first time I ever played guitar live in front of people was at McCabe's Guitar Store in Santa Monica, West LA, and it was country music. It's easy. It's all 4/4 and major keys. It's really easy.
My wife introduced me to country music a long time ago when we got together, about 7 years now. And it's all about getting laid, getting paid, getting drunk, you know, and blue collared shit. And I wasn't a country fan, but I'm like, I like these lyrics. And then I realized like that nowadays they kind of like, you know, put a hybrid of styles together. And speaking about a hybrid of styles, you know, you mentioned a whole lot of music there. I'm a huge Nirvana fan, and I got to go here. We're going to do a little conspiracy theory. I think Courtney Love whacked Kurt Cobain.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
You got it the other way. My wife says the same thing. You think he killed himself?
Ridiculous. Of course. That's terrible if you're in terrible pain. If you are in a deep depression like that, and, you know, the shotgun and the heroin, and it's just not a good mix. I think Courtney probably made every effort she could in her life to save him. She's going through her own journey too. You know, just days after he dies, 3 days, I think later, whole live through this drops. And she honestly forgot this. The record company is like, you're going to promote it, right? And she's like, kind of dealing with something right now. And Rolling Stone calls it one of the top 10 albums of the decade. It's fantastic.
It blows up.
You were
Yeah,
into Pixies or Breeders or anything that influenced Kurt's songwriting. And of course, the like 2 or 3 tracks that Kurt gave her for that album were fantastic. Went to School in Olympia. There's a couple of songs that he wrote for her. So it's just a tragedy, and it's probably hurts her even more to hear stuff like that. But, you know, that's the thing that happens. Paul McCartney's still alive and still has to hear he's not Paul. So it's part of the legend of being a rock star, and also being in that club, the 27 Club.
Yes.
That, you know, there's a mystique to it. And I love that Courtney kind of was able to channel that into acting, and because Larry Flint was fantastic, and she, you know, obviously did a great job.
Oh, excellent film. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I support your, you know, thing, but I want to think of the other possibility that this is an addict that has not getting high anymore from something that was supposed to kill. It was the only thing that killed the pain. That he said the only other time that the pain, that it didn't hurt in his upper GI, was when he's singing. And that's why he sang like that. It puts a pressure on his rib cage, and it would not hurt when he's actually performing. But his vocal cords blow out, and he can only do that, you know, 40 minutes at a time. So heroin's a great painkiller, I imagine. You know, they gave morphine to troops. So you know, I was raised in Hollywood, and addiction runs in the family, in all of my friends' families and careers. And we lose a lot of people. So it's not outside a story that, unfortunately, people, I think, wanted to consider. You know, Kurt, he is absolutely extraordinary. He was the voice that we needed at a very specific time. And it brought back music, like Red Hot Chili Peppers rode through it. Kind of, sort of. Sex Sugar, Blood Sugar, Sex Magic is phenomenal.
Oh man, great album. Probably one of my favorite from the 90s.
But you know, we also had STP, and I forgot what their first big, you know,
Great
big thing was.
album. Yep.
Yeah.
Crush, I think, was one of their first songs. Like down, 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 down. And you know what the thing was? Music was changing at that point in time. Like we went from the 80s where we had like the Skid Rows and all great bands, Motley Crue, all that stuff. I love all that.
I think where the biggest thing music changed in the 90s is in the entire country's sensibilities to race. And because in the club scene in the 90s, it was very mixed. And there's a great brother and sisterhood of everybody. And a lot are entertainers, but a lot weren't. You know, a lot of people are just people that live in LA and kind of going out. In the 80s, the MTV was there's a rock block, there's a rap block, there's a country, very separated. In the 90s, you started to see crossover hits. You started to see genre blending. You started to get De La Soul. And you're like, how do I pigeonhole this into something? So we started inventing new thing, house music. It's this, it's deep house, it's electronica, it's, you know. So I think that was a cultural thing happening that was bleeding through into the music.
Do you remember Judgment Night soundtrack? Cuba Gooding Jr.? That was like the thing that popped off. Like, because now we got like Biohazard and Onyx. It's like, how do you even comprehend this? And now you hear that song, you just want to go out and hit the streets and run or work out or do something. You know, I remember I got that soundtrack back in the day, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, there's so many artists collaborating from both like aspects of like the hip hop genre, from the rock genre, from the classic rock genre, and you know, and so on and so forth. That was so like forward progressive thinking. Remember back in the day when we had soundtracks where it's like it mattered, like Karate Kid Part 2, you know, when you hear I am the man that will fight for your honor. I can't sing worth of shit, but it's like that meant something.
Batman soundtrack. Are we gonna
there you go
one another?
The Crow, remember The Crow?
Yes.
Brandon Lee.
Yes,
like
the Blade Runner soundtrack had great dialogue. I love dialogue in soundtracks.
That shit mattered. Even I'm wearing a Transformers shirt right now. 86, Vince DiColi, who I cannot wait to interview at some point, also did the soundtrack and score for Rocky IV. I mean, it's bigger than the film.
I got introduced to David Byrne and Talking. I mean, I understood Talking Heads and their hits and Burning Down the House. Great. But on Adventures of Babysitting, David Simpkins, the writer, gave me the soundtrack to Something Wild on cassette. And David Byrne did most of the cuts and produced the others. And it's multicultural and influences. Did you see his latest, the Broadway show that he did?
I haven't.
Watch it, because he said that they did studies on when people watch entertainment and babies and humans, basically. And they found that their little brain waves went highest when they're looking at human faces and humans. Not nice sets, not great lighting, not great. So he removed everything in his show that wasn't just them. So he removed any sort of music stand, so the drum is, you know, a walking bass, and somebody's got a snare, and everyone is holding their instruments so they can walk around and just be people on the stage. But he plays all the great hits in this slightly new instrumentation. I got to see Sting. I was shooting Cousins.
Oh shit.
And Ted Danson and what's her face? Lieutenant Savick. Mr. Savick. Cheers. Kirstie Alley. We're going to go see. We were doing Cousins, and they were shooting Look Who's Talking 2, I think. So they had made a date to go see Sting at some big arena in Vancouver. So I go and watch, and it's him and a very cut down. He's got Wynton Marsalis's brother playing keyboards and like it, or no, what did he play? What does Wynton's brother play? Did he play? We just lost him too. It was like a 4-piece. And I went, how is he going to do all the instrumentation on Dream of the Blue Turtles? Because he was absolutely going to, first he does a couple of police songs. You're like, cool. Then he starts in Dream of Blue Turtles, and you're in your mind while they're playing, you hear all the other parts. Mm-hmm. You hear backup vocals, you hear other lines that aren't being played. But the songwriting is so strong that with just the simple instrumentation, it was this amazing experience. So back to live versus studio.
Oh,
The
dude,
technology is what changed it.
absolutely.
Technology is what allowed it multi-tracking and variable speed and all these kind of tools.
When you see a powerhouse band, like I've had the privilege to see Toto front row, Rush front row, Tool front row, like, you know,
Ooh.
yeah, exactly. A powerhouse, and we're talking about 3 to 4 guys. And you're mentioning Sting, like one of the greatest bass players of all time. In like, I can't even classify what genre they are. They're like pop reggae rock, you know. And they did punk in the early stages, and Stuart Copeland on the drums. I mean, you know, try to play those parts. And I was in a cover band at one point in time, and we did 3 sets. And they were like, "We're gonna put Message in a Bottle to start the third set." I'm like, "What? I'm gonna be dead!" Like, you know, because it's so fast, and it just keeps going. And it's a powerhouse of energy, and that's what Stuart Copeland really is, and one of the best to do it. We're still on the topic of music here. You know, I want to talk about Mick Jagger. He had a great show that he produced called Vinyl, and I really loved
Yes.
that show. But it was so unfortunate that I got canceled after just a season. Did you watch that show?
Yeah, watched it. They were doing the Deuce, Vinyl,
Yes.
the Comedy Store show, the fiction one, um, not the documentary one. So they were covering a lot of 70s stuff. Did you see Sunset Sound? Did you see the documentary on?
I haven't
Sunset
seen that. Tell me about that, please.
So it's this rat hole in LA that, you know, has so many great rock albums recorded in it. And it just talks about the beginnings of the studio, and, you know, different artists come in, and you have to watch it. You have to watch Sunset Sound.
Where's that put out on?
It's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, I think. One of those two. It's a documentary that goes through one studio and the changes up through digital. And it's if you like production, because I love engineering.
Absolutely.
I love engineering. You're gonna die when you watch this. So many great stories.
Yeah, man, I'm all about it, dude. I've been recording since I'm 19 years old. Did a couple things and whatnot. You know, and the thing is, the transition to digital was a little weird. Like right now, I'm doing like a film score, you know, for a horror film, which is really fun. And you know, it's easy because you could like not be in the same room as someone and just send them the MIDI file. And my wife had to explain to me what MIDI is. I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like they're asking me for MIDIs. Like, what the fuck is a MIDI? Like, I don't understand this MIDI shit. It's like, you know, remember Weird Science? Who is this Gary character? That's like how I'm like, what is that? Who's the MIDI? I don't know. I play the drums. That's all I do. So luckily she's very intelligent and really like holds my hand through all this stuff. But you know, all right. So
one of my neighbors was Dennis Dragon, and he, not only being in surf punks, he had a home studio that was in the smallest room of a house you could imagine. And all it was a couple of keyboards, his guitar there. He would just use a effects thing for the bass. Who cares? He just octave it down. He would sit there and cut and do skate videos. And he'd also get other jobs for B movies, horror movies. But the modesty was, and he had Cakewalk. So this was before Pro Tools, but he used Cakewalk, which had 256 tracks of MIDI. And then with that, you could get all of your kind of drums and bass and most keyboards and stuff. And there you just had, you could do vocals and a couple of guitar tracks, and you're off and running, man. That stuff sounded great.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was inspiring to know that he's like, oh yeah, I produced, you know, a stink bug right here. And I'm like, wow.
Yo, I've done like tracks like, and people are like, yo, that sounds really tight, man. Where'd you record? I'm like, my living room on my digital drum set via USB through a computer.
Look at Billie Eilish. Look at Billie Eilish.
You know,
and how, you know, the album's produced on her bed.
It's crazy, like what you could do with technology nowadays. But all right, we got to get there. Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead. You know, I'm going to bookend this. Dishes Are Done, man. That is one of the most iconic films of anyone that's listening is probably childhood. So let's talk about that experience, bro. Like, that was an amazing film. You did a great job. And it's
Thanks.
funny because you talk about being a classically trained pianist and all this kind of stuff. You had long hair. You were a complete metalhead. Let's talk about it.
Well, I wasn't, and I had the short hair I had at the end of the movie, so there was a wig for the whole Kenny stuff. And I just loved the transformation. I just loved how he arcs from heavy metal Guns N' Roses stoner to a gourmet chef. I love the redemption.
Did you actually shoot the dishes?
No, I just had a little Daisy air rifle, and doesn't do anything. It was the pump going. And all of my friends, Lizard and Hellhound, and were a few of them were my friends, and in real life prior to the film. And so we had a good way of working together and kind of or staging that bit. We just figured out we're gonna have an assembly line of loading up plates, so guys will pass the plate. Okay, a preloader, you gotta have to launch it, and we're gonna have call signals. Okay, pull. All right, and just so it's a team effort. I always believe if production gives me a gang, we're gonna figure out a way to really approach it as a gang, because I think audiences they love it when they see little groups or pods all kind of act together in concert. So
that's the theater experience. And
that was, and then it showed up it shows up in the trailer. And so I was very lucky. For 2 weeks, the United States was bombasted by this great, but people didn't even have to see the film to hear the reference on the line. So that, thank goodness it was in the trailer.
I tell you what, the way you vibe in your films, and it's usually you're around a lot of people, which is theater. And that's why I think your films do so well, and they play off really well, because I have a lot of friends that do theater, and I know how tough that is, or just like live acts. And when I watched all your films over the years, and as I've become older, we all, could understand and appreciate things better. To see you play off of people like that, it's like everyone carries each other's weight, and you play off each other like almost like you're a family, right? Like, I mean, that's pretty much how it works when you're doing production.
I may not be a great actor, but I know how to crack other actors. And they totally let their guard down around me because of the family and Coogan and this. And so they're just really comfortable around me. And I'll learn where their buttons are. And then I'll push them when the camera's rolling. And I'll just get that rise out of them. And you can't do that if you don't know somebody. And so it's fuck or fight. And I'll make friends. And a few people I've stepped on toes and they don't love it. But that's the only way that I'm method is. I believe that if the relationships are believable, this guy is getting under this person's skin, that, I don't know, it's fun. And it's funny. And even if I'm not trying to do something like that, there's a reason people are cast in their roles. And so the hero that I'm supporting, sister, babysitter, cousin, whatever, they may in real life actually be going through or have experience from what the main character is, because that's why they're cast in the movie. Their personality, their essence resonates with this part. So all I've got to be is that piece that movie needs to that person, and sit there and keep throwing the rocks out. Sorry, someone's starting up their hog.
No worries, man. So I want to transition before I let you leave. What about sports? You like sports?
Of course. Well, I live in Los Angeles, the best teams that money can buy. And so it's a prerequisite that I am a Kings fan. I'm a Lakers fan. And we don't really have a football team. So
you like the Dodgers, obviously, too, right?
Oh, you blue. Of course.
I'm going after the Yankees are going after them this year, brother. We got some
$280 million on a roster. Good luck.
It's absolutely true, man.
And Dodgers are just as fickle as Hollywood producers. What? He might be our MVP. Trade him.
I'm not gonna lie, that's an amazing team. I tell you what, though, they step up, man. Like whenever the Yankees play them or I see them play anyone, I'm like, all right, I live in Vegas, so sports books usually have it correct. I'm like, Dodgers will probably win. Like it sucks. My Yankees look good this year. I'm a big boxing guy, MMA guy, baseball fan, football. I like everything, man. I took up golf recently and because of boredom to like pass time. I'm terrible. Do you ever try to golf? Golfing sucks.
Yes. I'm friends with Robert McKee, who writes on screenplay and screenwriting and stuff. His son is a golf coach, doctor to the top golf people.
Jesus.
The pros. So he was, he'll help them get out of their head or fix the thing on their knee. He could physically or psychologically, he helps top pros, PGA pros compete on the top levels. So, and he gets it from his father, who's like screenwriting's a discipline, and to write it, it's not like, oh, it's you're natural at it. It is a art form. It's a craft. Let's put it that way. So
it's incredibly.
He was
hard.
actually coaching somebody when Harrison Ford's plane crashed on the golf course, and the people he were coaching was a orthopedist. So that back injury and everything, he literally had two doctors run up to him who were like a trauma surgeon and an orthopedist. Talk about Harrison Ford's good karma. Anyway, he taught me some lessons on chipping, and I'd been around golf. I carried my grandfather's clubs, and I had a love-hate relationship with it. Corey Haim and I golfed together, 9-hole public course. Corey insisted on going the full 18 and then pies out around 15. Oh God. So we're just walking through 16 and 17. Sorry. So funny. I love Haim, and I'll miss him dearly, but I also wanted to, sometimes he drove you nuts. Golf is great because your competitor, your opponent is yourself. And you're really only measuring your own performance. And it is, it's like acting or music. You have to learn to relax. You have to learn all these techniques and then throw them out the window and go, oh, you're going a little faster tempo this time. Okay, got it. And you got to catch up.
Everyone says relax, you hit the nail on the head there. And so when I started golfing, I was actually sending balls to outer space to the driving range because I was playing baseball. I would like go on my back foot and lift my front foot and hit it. And people come up to me like, that's not the way to do it. That's not the way to do it. And I'm on a golf course with no sleeves on, like all badass fucking tats blazing and shit. And they're like, yo, you're all types of wrong. But I'm like, I'm doing good. So one of my buddies is actually pretty good at golf. I'm like, I'll teach you how to box. You teach me how to golf, And so we hang out and we go to the driving range. He's like, everything is wrong about you. You need to relax more. And that's the hardest part. And then, finding the right like distance and angles. I'm like, but it's such a challenge. I like challenges, man. I'm like, I got to figure this thing out. And I keep going back. And the more I just go back to my roots of playing like golf, like a lot of people say, what is it, Happy Gilmore? I'm just kind of like, I'm better off. Like, let me just do me. I'm going to ride dirty on the golf course. I'm going to have my side piece booze with me, like whatever. But, hey man.
The thing about golf, it's not, can you hit the ball 150 yards? It's, can you hit it 30 yards?
Yeah, that's right.
That's golf.
Accuracy. Because once you go past the drive, you have to get it to where it needs to go and to get in a hole, But hey, brother, I mean, this was a great experience. Where could people follow you? What's next? What's going on with you, man?
You can follow me. KeithCooganOnline.com is the website and leads to the socials. Keith Coogan, Twitter. Keith Coogan on Instagram. See how boring I am? And I also sell dishes. I will sign dishes are done, man. And so you can, or autographs and stuff like that through there. Cameo, I'm on Cameo. And also a web series I did during quarantine. It is the Quarantine Bunch. That's on YouTube. 6 episodes. How do I explain it? You better like Tom Green. It's anti-Tom.
Absolutely.
It's a fake out. It makes you think the show's one thing. And anyway, I probably spoiled it already. They see dead people. No. And then I did Wrong Reasons, which is Josh Roush, who directed Magnum Opus, which was the making of reboot of Jay and Silent Bob's reboot. Directed a beautiful little thriller suspense film, and I play a newscaster, actually more like an investigative journalist guy. That's just, he's a douche. So it's always fun to play douches, closer to my core, and auditioning for stuff, and also Pinky, my wife. Now we started a YouTube channel, Keith and Pinky's Hollywood Tales. So she is a fangirl, loves to get selfies with folks, and I'm an actor, and we actually met at our first autograph convention. That's a story for another day, but it just shows our kind of adventures around Los Angeles, and yeah, so that's what up to right now.
See, this is why you're a brother from a different mother to me, man. I was going to segue before I let you go about a couple things, and now I got a couple more things to ask you, so you can't go just yet. Like Bronx Tale, now you can't leave. You know, just Pulmonary. Now you can't leave. So, first of all, Kimberly Couples, who set this interview up, great person, great friend of mine, and I'm so appreciative of her. She actually,
Kimberly.
Yes, hi Kimberly. She asked a great question. You mentioned your wife, you know, and you guys been together a long time. A lot of people are having difficulties during this time. Luckily, I'm in a 7-year marriage and everything like that. And I'm cool. Like, we're good. I mean, we have a good and bad days, but it happens. What's the key to a successful marriage, brother, if you don't mind me asking?
Wow, you're asking me. It
Yeah.
will be 8 years this October. God, I don't know. I have no idea. Love the person, listen to them.
It's that simple, right?
Try to
love,
do
listen.
Shit they say, you know.
I love it. Love, listen. That's it. Pat on the back every once in a while.
Languages. I'm a service guy, so I'll be like, I'll cook you food. I'll do this thing. Let me, whatever. I'll do service things. My wife is a gifter, so she loves to give gifts and cards and notes and thank you. And that's foreign to me. I grew up in a Hollywood family that's like, screw everybody else. Get your fuck you money and then fuck everybody else. So that mentality of like caring about people and acknowledging them and giving them gifts, and I'm like, I love it. So I kind of learning some of that from my wife. We'll see.
I think the key to a successful relationship, if anyone's wondering, is a lot of sex, a lot of compliments.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Dude, we're putting up numbers out here that is just like insane right now. And
my
that's the
wife
best part.
Thing a long time ago, she read this thing about numbers. And so she had kept track. And she was like, in a marriage, if you see the numbers dip or whatever. So that was a great spit take.
We had this. The reason why I'm laughing is because me and my wife had the same conversation about the numbers game. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was hilarious.
No, that's you get it. You get it. No, that's important. That's incredibly important.
So, if anyone takes anything away from this pod and radio show, if you're married or you're with anyone, whatever, do a lot of sex. Keep track of your numbers.
Listen and love.
And listen and love. And every once in a while, throw a pat on the back compliment for some random shit. Yo, Keith, I cannot thank you enough, man. This was badass, bro. This was so much fun, dude. Okay, so the show will be up on iHeart, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Google, Amazon, everywhere over here now within the next hour. So I appreciate everyone for listening. And let me ask you something. What are you smoking right there? What is that? What do you got?
Oh,
tobacco?
It's a Juul. So I unfortunately I'd smoked on and off over the years.
Yeah, me too.
Right. Kind of, great time to quit smoking. The beginning of quarantine. So
I did the same thing.
And I tried different vape stuff. Friends had given me, cigarettes that were supposed to, like vape ones, and I'm like, nothing really felt like it. So then I tried the Juul, and it was the only thing that could be kind of supplanted. And at autograph conventions, the longer you're at your table, the more money you make, and the more people you can meet, and all that other good stuff. And my wife is very upset. She's my booth babe, and she's upset with me running out every hour to go have a cigarette. So she encouraged me as well, and I tried the Juul, and I would use that every other time. Maybe 2 hours I'd run and have a cigarette, but I tried the Juul and this and that, and it finally a trip last year, road trip with a lot of smoking and everything. Got home and I was like, "But I doing a pack and a half." That was, and I quit successfully. Like at one point, I quit for 5 years, cold turkey. So I said, "It's time," and you just know when it's time. A million people can tell you to quit smoking, but I went, "All right, I'll do it." And I read up on this and that and this, and off-brand is weird, or too high, heat is weird, extra additives you don't need, and this. And I looked in Juul and tried it, and it really worked. And so, cool. I'm 100% now and haven't smoked in a year.
I stopped for a while, and then pandemic hit. I got all crazy. So I got me a Juul. I lost the fucking thing.
Oh, yeah.
2-3 times.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, every time I got to buy a fucking $70. Like, it's crazy.
I'm rocking 3. So I've got a couple of bases, because the bases, I actually went on Juul and ordered the $8.95 base that you had. And now they give them away they're doing $9, $9.90.
I got to get on that, because I got to get off cigarettes. Yeah.
And then I was in Utah, and they are like different on, coffee and tobacco and alcohol. So I go to a smoke shop. They still have them in Utah, and they sell me an off-brand Juul that's actually spelled Jewel instead of Juul, which is Ju. And this one plugs in with the USB instead of the magnet. And it was way hotter. It was like, and the pods fit. So I lost it, unfortunately. But I love my black market Juul, because you could really get a hot hit.
Hey, I tell you what, I mean, the hot hit, excuse me, is everything. As you could tell with the throat,
Yeah,
that's exactly, that's important. But I mean, I lost it, and I was in San Diego, and I'm like chilling with the family, and on vacation. I'm like, oh shit, now I got to go back to cigarettes, right? Because I'm not gonna go buy another Juul. Like, I mean, even though it's a good product, I'm like, damn, I got to spend 70 right now. Like, I'm already on vacation, whatever. And speaking of vacation, I'm going to Cali to train at high altitude in a week. I cannot wait to work in train in martial arts, a little retreat, which is going to be badass. And we can't wait to see what you're doing. And what I want to mention before we close out, Kevin Smith, like, that must have been an amazing experience. He seems like one of the most down-to-earth dudes you could ever meet, right?
Oh, and such a hard worker. Yeah, it's funny. Binky and I were watching Chasing Amy yesterday, and then we're like, well, now we got to watch the end of Reboot for Ben's scene and Joey Lauren Adams scene. We got to watch that again for that wrap up. We wound up watching, of course, all my parts in Reboot or Name Drops or whatever. And but his movie holds up. Harley Quinn gave it incredible. Jay did an amazing job. They are the heart of that movie. And yeah, Kevin's just a really good guy, and he very generous on a set. He did things that I've never seen a director do.
Wow.
And probably because he's way more closer to the production than some studio. They're like, no, every day you sit there and write checks. And it was one of the most together productions I'd ever worked on. Huge shout outs to Jordan and Tracy and everybody over there. And it ran like a clock, and every film has its challenges, you just overcome them. And to have Kevin there, who is ready, he's like, oh, I've got a lot of resources and a lot of people. He would come up with an idea, and 10 minutes later, boom, it's there, it's dressed, it's made, it's lit, it's
passion.
So he just had a team of people that could execute his visions like clockwork over and over all day. And they did long days and they worked hard. I got to breeze in, a couple hours and I was out. But right before he'd roll, and then right before action, he'd go, all right, everybody, let's hear it for Diedrich Bader. And yeah, action. So go off of that high of like, oh, and then action. So the energy's there. And at the end, at wrap, it's not just, that's a wrap on, Keith Coogan. it was, that's a wrap. Thanks for coming out. And, you know, this and that. And he like would tell a story. And I go, I've never heard. Usually you got to just kind of move on. So that was different in that he, I think, was more about the people than necessarily the job. And maybe, you know, his death brush scare had a lot to do with
he had a heart attack.
Refocusing that. I've never heard, you know, what an asshole. Anyone like Kevin Smith who constantly goes, you know, I'm such an asshole, probably isn't.
He looks great too. He lost a lot of weight. And the thing is too, like, I love his passion for everything. Like when you hear him on his podcast and talk about Star Wars or comics or films, like this guy knows his shit. And I cannot wait to talk to him. And
he's the epitome of never growing up.
Yep.
And Peter Pan
inner childhood.
But he's
absolutely
also, he held on to the Close Encounters and Jaws and He-Man and the influences that, you know, were the kinds of things he could probably recite dual line, you know, for line from line. I mean, I just caught in Chasing Amy the whole Jaws bit with this. They're talking about their emotional scars and then physical scars, and I went, it's lit like Jaws. It's got then I brought up a screenshot and it's got plates on the table just like John. I went, oh, I don't even think I'd ever caught that. And I'm sure it's a big deal with fans. They're like, of course you didn't know they'd see the Jaws reference there. But now I'm like, have to look back at his whole thing and look for other of those influences. I've seen a few of them and I'm like, I think I know where that's from.
Look at Clerks, like when they talk about the Death Star, you know, when Randall comes in and they're talking about construction workers and all the things that happens, like, you know, all the, you know, innocent victims that were construction workers that could have potentially been murdered on the Death Star. Like, did the, you know, the Rebel Alliance or like the Empire consider that? Like, that's what's great about him is randomness. And I mean, look at the movie Clerks. When I talk to Kevin, it's going to be like, I want to talk about so many things, but this movie Clerks is a brilliant film, like absolutely brilliant. Like if you look at like little like screenshots when people are talking outside and he just randomly shoots the camera to their shoes and how they're standing, it's like it really engages you. And especially being from New Jersey, like I understand the personality. And I think one of the best moments of the movie, there's so many of them, but try not to suck, you know, another dick going out to the parking lot after she says to, you know, her boyfriend, you know, that she sucked 37 dicks. Like,
but on the other side of that,
comes up with that.
You got the funniest line in the movie, and then you've got one of the most touching where you actually have, I think, Kevin say, you know, most girls would just cheat on you, and not every one of them would bring lasagna to work. So you don't get that without that. And that's, I think, what Kevin gets. I was watching his scene analysis on the Chuli's scene, and Scott Schiaffo was, you know, Chuli's sales guy. Brilliant, great wordsmithing, a point of view, you know, many different point of views. Each character has its own. He calls it out. And so when I get to the point about he's the ultimate adult that never grew up, is that I think that this fan base, they see that. They see somebody who's very successful and driven and prolific, who never did, who never let go of their childhood, which was highly product and image and story. Comic books. Look at the time.
Yeah, man.
The stories that were being told. So, yeah, that's, and then to work on Reboot and have Method and Redman and Tommy Chong, you know, and I tried to go up to Tommy Chong at the premiere and be like, hey, I'm Kenny from Don't Tell Mom. He's like, what's that, man? I don't know what you're talking about, man.
That shows you're acting right there because you got the eyes proper. You know,
that's great, man.
It's funny because a lot of people always question me, like, what's with your eyes? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, are they open? I'm like, yeah. You know, every time, like, my wife is Japanese, and my eyes are like more like, you know, smaller than hers, which is weird. Like sometimes when I open, but it's like usually I'm always like this over here, you know, like so I look more Asian than she does most of the time. And even my stepdaughter, you know, like she's Asian, obviously, as well. But listen, man, this was an amazing time. I can't wait to have you back again, and I can't wait to follow all your things coming up. And dude, like, what a great time. And like I said, I'll send you all the links as soon as they're all up, brother.
Awesome, man. Thanks for your time. And hello. Thanks anyone who's watching, everyone who's watching. Appreciate it. And take care, Johnny Sig.